First, I'd like to tell you all that I've missed you. You come to my thoughts all the time, which when you read the Apostle Paul and he says, I pray for you continually, I think that's what it is, to just think about you all the time. And I want to say that I'm so thankful that the church has afforded me this time of leisure and contemplation. Even though I did have to preach today and yesterday. My father's memorial service was yesterday, so it worked out perfectly to do it all on one weekend. But let's, a word of prayer. Open my lips that my mouth might show forth your praise, and may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. You know, God moves in a funny way often. When I realized that this was the day that we were going to celebrate Beth, as I often do, I look at the calendar of past, and it was 15 years ago today that I came to the Dover Church to preach my candidating sermon to be your pastor. And what I realized, thinking back on 15 years ago me and 15 years ago you, and most of you weren't here 15 years ago, was that neither the church as it was then, nor me as I was then, had any idea of what the future would hold. Because a big part of that future has been Beth Benjamin, and she wasn't even a member of the church. She had to join the church to be on the search committee that called me. And aside from my wife and kids and 2 dogs, it also occurred to me, Beth has been the central character in the story of my life here in Dover the last 15 years. Well, Beth and Betty Brady. But 5 days a week at least, often 6, 40 or 45 hours a week. I'd go home at 40, but I'd be driving by doing kids' things, and I would see the lights were still on the church, and I'd say, Beth's in there Sisyphusing, and I'll explain what Sisyphusing is in a moment. But some years, in those years, it really was just Beth and I in the admin wing for weeks on end. So it's very important that we do what we're doing today, which is thanking her for everything that she has done for all of us, with us, among us, and through us, for this community and for the world. She has been absolutely essential to everything that we have done. And I don't want to thank her just to be polite, as in have to remember to thank her so she doesn't feel slighted. Frankly, she would have preferred to feel slighted this morning. She doesn't like to do this. But thankful because giving thanks is good faith. Thanking her is good for us and for our faith, because that's where faith begins, with a sense of gratitude for all the goodness. If you are thankful enough, it can change your life. You notice the goodness, you count the blessings, and what happens is you start to notice more and more, and you get a lightness to your life, and you expect more. And Beth has brought so much goodness to this church and all of us, and I feel is leaving us expecting even more. You see, because Beth is the poster child for what I love about being part of a church. Not riding it out in the pews, but diving right into the middle. Because in the story of Beth Benjamin, you can see how one person can change the world. And in the first draft of this sermon, I had a list of everything, but it was like blah, 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 blah. It was too much. But I do remember that when I first asked Beth to be the moderator of the church, her response was, "Me? I'm not very churchy." And you might remember my response, "You are perfect. For one thing, you are not a New England Congregationalist." I'll come back to what's the problem with New England Congregationalists as one who's born and raised, so I know of what I speak. But her not being churchy was she wasn't stuck in the idea of this is the way it's always been done and we're going to keep doing it that way, even if it's not working. She didn't know better, so she tried things. And she and I set out to try to create a culture of abundance in this place. Because to be honest, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but when I arrived, there was a feeling of decline. That this church was a little bit of a past tense church. Everyone was always telling me how great it used to be, how many people there used to be here, all the great things we used to do here. And it felt like the best times might have been behind us. So she and I just started everything up. And there was not one important ministry in this church that Beth has not been the Sisyphus on. For those of you who don't remember your Greek mythology, he's the guy who was doomed to spend his life pushing a boulder up a hill, only to have it rolled down every evening. And back then, we didn't have a lot of money to spend on things, and we didn't have a lot of volunteers. So Beth came every day, and she pushed, and she pushed, and she pushed. And there's not one ministry in this church, many that didn't exist back then that do exist now. You can look in the closets, you can pick up the carpet, you can go in the rooms, her fingerprints are everywhere. Even music. To be honest, if she hadn't asked Mike and his bandmates to come in, we might have bailed out on Dixieland years ago when I was the lead trumpeter. For those of you who remember what that experience was like, you'll know what I'm talking about. She pushed and pushed and pushed, everything, everywhere, all the time. And some of those stones have rolled back down the hill, but most of them didn't. I want to list just a few that I think, how do you pick the most impactful? But the funerals and memorial services in this church. It occurs to me, she and I have helped a generation of people say goodbye to their loved ones. Now, I, of course, have been the pastor, and I stand up in front, and I do what a pastor does, but she has been the midwife. She has helped give birth to the entire experience through multiple phone calls and staying through the reception to clear up at the end. And if any of you have had to say goodbye to a loved one here at the Dover Church in this time, you will know exactly how much is involved with that. Lee, who's here today, started us, creating this culture of loving care, but we are known for that. Want to get buried? Go to the Dover Church. They'll give you a good one. That guy will act like he knows you. And that Beth Benjamin, she's something. We have some guests here today from Afghanistan who are now becoming Americans. That makes me want to cry. When you guys got off the plane and we were standing there and we're like, what are we doing? This is what we're doing. Giving guys a chance to make a life for themselves. She did it. I drove, but she did it. And then tea and check-in, which I've always been sort of jealous of. It's a women's fellowship, meets on Thursday right on the other side of my wall, and they're having a great time. I mean, you go to church to have some friends, people who know you, and she created that. So, anytime any of you are feeling down about the state of our country or the world or the direction our society is headed, you're bored with your life, you feel like you're just blah, you want to do something impactful, my office is over there in the corner. Come see me. I've got stuff for you to do with me. And I'm going to tell you the story of Beth Benjamin, because my friends, where else in the world today can you have the chance to put your faith into action than in a church our size? Now I get to the part about how she was perfect, not being a New England Congregationalist. I see a few of you out there, and there's no offense intended, but we New England Congregationalists have a problem with ministers. We're very suspicious of ministers. They have to keep an eye on us. I mean, someone's got to be the minister, get up there every Sunday and give a sermon. But, you want me at your meetings, and you ask for my professional advice. But the moment I start to give it, oh, Jesus, here he is. He thinks he's the Pope of Dover. All his big ideas, he's trying to make us do this, that, and the other thing, thinks he knows best. Of course, that's not your dialect. But that's how I hear it. After month and month and year of all these meetings, and everyone's worried about the risks and the foot dragging, and we got to have motions and seconds and amendments and table for further discussion for the next 2 years, and everyone wants to talk about everything that could go wrong if anything ever did go wrong, although, my friends, nothing has ever gone wrong. Even the position of a director of congregational life, I had to get the moderator to think it was his idea in order for him to run with it so that we could hire Beth Benjamin. It took months. But then there was Beth, and you weren't suspicious of her. In fact, oh my God, Beth Benjamin, she's a genius. She's got the best ideas. I envied her. Get out of the way, here comes Beth Benjamin with another great idea. I'd be in my office like, every now and then I'd give her one of my ideas so that she'd run with it, because there was a better chance of it happening if she did it rather than me. So Beth, you may not be churchy, but I'm telling you right now, you are the expert on doing mid-sized church in places like Dover in all of North America. And you could have a future career as a consultant doing just that. I'm not exaggerating. I know I wave my arms and I talk and I'm flamboyant and I use hyperbole, but that's not hyperbole. I want to let you in on a secret. I'm not much of a manager. I give my staff... Oh, you knew that? Is there any liquid alcohol in here? What I'm trying to say is I let my staff do their thing. I let them do what they're supposed to do the way they know how to do it best. Which is my way of saying I really didn't know what she was doing most of the time. But what I did know was how she was doing it all of the time. With kindness and warmth, with patience, way more patience than me. Just ask the lady over the fence who calls to complain about the nursery school. With generosity and welcome, with optimism and enthusiasm, it was always can do. And she made whoever was sitting in front of her feeling like that was the only person she wanted to be talking to. Which was funny, because when I would call her into my office to talk to her, I could see that she couldn't wait to get out of there. She'd be looking at me like, come on, come on, come on, come on, I got a million things to do. So I'd see her running here and running there and emailing and being on Zoom calls and carrying things. And I'd say, Beth, what are you up to? And she'd say, describe some enormous project with a pending deadline. And I'd do the New England Yankee thing and raise my eyebrow, which is my way of saying, can I help you out? And this is the Beth Benjamin quote, we're getting there. We'll get there. Well, Beth, we're there. This is it. No more Sisyphusing for you. So I want to leave you all with a biblical story. Because Beth has been living a biblical story with us right in this place. For those of you who think the Bible is just a fable, you need to know the story of Beth Benjamin. Or as I say, chapter and verse from the book of Beth Benjamin. God has been up to something amazing amongst us here. God, like all the stories in the Bible, has taken the most unlikely person. If you asked Beth as a schoolgirl, do you want to grow up to be a director of congregational life? You want to run a church someday? High school Beth, college Beth, young professional. Imagine this. Mike and Beth are dating, and he goes, you know, honey, I've just got this feeling. Someday you're going to be something called a director of congregational life. in a congregational church in a place called Dover, Massachusetts, which we have no idea where it is. Just like Moses, just like Samuel, just like Sarah and David and Jeremiah and Peter and Paul and Mary. They all answered, "Not me, you've got the wrong person." But everything fell into place, and she was able and willing, and she has helped us make up a whole new church. Because for those of you who haven't been here in a while, you look around. It turned over. And then it started to turn over again, and all new people have come. I feel like I'm pastoring the second and a half church in the last 15 years. God is doing a new thing with us. And in thanking Beth for who she's been with us, who she is, what she's done, and what we have been able to do because of her help, the best way, my friends, to continue to thank her is let us not become another past tense church. We're always thinking, oh gosh, if Beth were here. Because if Beth were here, what she would say, okay, let's go. We'll get there. Thanks be to God.